The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, good afternoon. I am Brent Siemens, the Human Resources Manager for the district, and welcome and thank you so much for joining us today for part two of the Better You webinar series. Today's guests we have with us are Dr. Troy Adams, the COO of WellSteps, and we also have Dr. Mary Steinhardt with the University of Texas at Austin and an expert on resilience. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Adams. Dr. Adams, the time is yours.
Thank you very much, Brent. I appreciate it. I just wanted to point out that the sun you see setting on the slide on your screen is setting right through University of Texas Stadium, the football stadium, and Dr. Steinhardt and I both had offices in that building. Mary still does. Dr. Steinhardt still does, and of course I don't. But when I was a grad student there, I did. And so there you go. If you're not on the webinar last time, you didn't hear me say that Dr. Steinhardt is one of the nicest people I know, in spite of the fact that she is a full professor and has done all kinds of miraculous things in her life. So I think with that, I will toss to Dr. Steinhardt and let her take it away.
Well, thank you, Dr. Adams. I so appreciate you and all you do out in the world to improve people's wellness, and thank you for having me. Thanks to everyone for listening in. Welcome to our second webinar titled Better You, Be Resilient by Learning to Find Growth in Stressful Situations. As we continue, we'll discuss two more practices that you can use to grow your resilience or to transform a part of you that is struggling, that may have given up, or is diminished in putting up with life at a lower level of well-being. These include the practice of using stress as an opportunity to grow and the practice of self-leadership. Also, I hope that you've been using the practice of mindfulness as a foundation to grow your resilience. So let's take a moment and check in regarding mindfulness. I really liked Dr. Adams' question last week about using mindfulness with your students. Point out when you notice students successfully bouncing back from stressful situations, or when they stay focused and remain flexible despite adversity. Point out resilient qualities you see in the classroom. For example, non-judgment, a sense of calm, being flexible, being supportive of one another, bouncing back and trying again, or speaking up when they see some unfairness. Remind your students that resilience can be cultivated. All we have to do is practice. We can all learn to bend and grow with change in stressful situations. If we pay better attention to this moment and the next moment, the payoff is that we gain greater wisdom, insight, and acceptance of ourselves and others. We have a little more compassion, act a little braver, and are a little more authentic with ourselves and others. Also recall the practice of mindfulness and that it activates our relaxation response, which has the opposite effect of our fight or flight response. It slows down our breathing, decreases our heart rate and blood pressure, and helps us think more clearly. So remember to practice your breathing exercises to activate your relaxation response. Pick a few loving kindness meditations to say in your classroom as you begin class or as students leave class, and let your students contribute to the phrases you say. Also, continue to notice when you use more emotion-focused coping strategies over the long term, like blaming or making excuses. You're probably being give up or put up, so notice that. And when you use more problem-focused coping strategies like taking action or positive framing, the result is bounce up or step up. You might also share this slide with your students. And if you do, help students see that that the cure for give up is experience. Often when students feel like they failed, the reality is just that they lack experience. All they need is more practice, and you can help them with that. Now let me explain our second practice, which is the practice of using stress as an opportunity to grow. I know that sounds counterintuitive, that stress can be good for us, but it is. And once you understand this, you'll see stressful situations in a whole different light. For example, sometimes a stressful situation is more than your protective factors can handle, and you feel overwhelmed. It happens to all of us. To illustrate how stressful experiences can help us, let's think about stress from the perspective of exercise. Let's say that you and I want to get stronger physically, and so we plan to start lifting some weights. If you can lift 30 pounds easily, I'd probably suggest you add more weight. So let's say you add 10 more pounds. Now you're lifting 40 pounds and your arms are a little vulnerable as I spot you and cheer you on. Although your arms feel a little shaky and fragile, if you can hang in there and regularly lift 40 pounds a few times a week, you have tremendous potential to grow stronger. Of course, we don't want to overtrain because we could get injured, or undertrain because over time our muscles could atrophy and we'd get weaker. But feeling a little stress overload is good. It helps us grow stronger. Now, to grow stronger physically, you and I can make a plan. For example, I'll meet you in the morning at 7 a.m. to exercise. But how about emotional or psychological growth, even social growth? They often blindside us when we least expect it. It's in those moments that we need to take a deep breath from a place of mindfulness and remind ourselves that nothing bad is happening. Actually, it's good, because now we have an opportunity to grow stronger emotionally or psychologically, an opportunity to grow our resilience, just like lifting weights. Lifting weights psychologically involves three things: taking responsibility, focusing on empowering interpretations, which are positive yet realistic thoughts rather than negative thoughts, and creating meaningful connections. Let's talk briefly about each of these. Let's start with taking responsibility. At the very bottom of the responsibility model is denial. If you remember, denial is a type of emotion-focused coping. When we're in denial, we think, maybe if I ignore this for long enough, it'll go away. If we're at the level of denial, we can't learn. We can't learn because we deny the very existence of the problem. So let's move up a level. Perhaps you see there's a problem, but we lay the blame on someone else. Can we learn now? No, we still can't learn, because with this thinking, your boss, your teenager, or whoever you've blamed is the one that needs to do all the learning. Let's move up another level. Now let's suppose you make a bunch of excuses and rationalize the problem. For example, I'm sorry I didn't get that report to you on time, but she didn't get her part of the report to me. And so left last week, and now I have all his work, so that's why I didn't get that report to you. That's making excuses. So I still can't learn because I just rationalized the problem away. Many of us spend most of our time during the day in denial, laying blame, or making excuses. At the end of the day, however, too many of us end up shaming ourselves. And anytime we're in the position of shame, we are unable to grow and learn because we spend all of our time feeling bad and blaming ourselves for the problem. What we need to do is treat ourselves with respect and stand up for ourselves, rather than shame ourselves into thinking there's no way we can succeed. All four responses, denial, laying the blame, making excuses, and shame, are what we call below the line when it comes to the responsibility model. We can't learn a thing. We want to move above the line and own our power to choose and create. That's taking responsibility. According to this definition, you are the one who's choosing. You are the one with the power. You are the creator. For many people, such awareness is profound. They begin to realize that for a long time, perhaps years or even decades, they've been giving their power away. They've been giving their control away. When we give our power away and don't take responsibility for our lives, we can't be resilient. We don't bounce up from stressful situations in life. Rather, we give up, or we learn to put up with life's stressful situations. It's important to point out that you can take responsibility and still want someone to behave differently, or prefer that the situation was different. When you take responsibility, you deal with the reality of the situation. And within that reality, you own your power to choose and create. You realize that even when a situation looks bleak, there's always things you can do. Now, is anybody above the line all the time? Of course not. Even Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King dipped below the line. The key is to be aware when you're below the line and ask ourselves if we can let go. Oh, I'm blaming my colleague. Can I let go of that and move above the line? Now I'm making a bunch of excuses. Can I let go of that? Oh, I'm shaming myself. Can I let go of that? It's the awareness that we're below the line on the responsibility model, then letting go and consciously moving above the line and taking more and more responsibility in our lives. Let's take a minute to discuss how you feel and behave when you're in control versus when you're not in control. How do you feel when you're in control? Most people tell me it feels good. We're more productive, more relaxed. Our self-esteem increases, and our behavior is more likely to go above the line. However, there's lots of things we can't control. We can't control other people. We can't control the weather. We can't control some computer crashes. And we can't control some of the decisions coming down from the top. How do we feel when we're out of control? Of course, we're frustrated, upset. Our productivity goes down. Our self-esteem goes down. And our behavior is more likely to go below the line. We need to understand the paradox that you can be in control even in a situation in which you have no control. The best thing to do in a situation when you have no control, no influence, is just to adapt or adjust. In situations where we have no control, you change, you adapt, you adjust, and in that sense, you have control. You may not have control over what happens to you, but you always have control over your response to what happens to you. Your response to the circumstances in your life is the most important. It is more important than the circumstances. In fact, eventually your response to what happens to you may impact what happens to you in the future. There's a little skinny book I highly recommend called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, who was a psychiatrist imprisoned in the Nazi concentration camps in World War II. He says the ultimate freedom is man's ability to choose his response to any condition. So what we want to do when we have no control is realize that we're still in control. We're in control of our response. Now let's talk about the second component, which is how we think. We're going to focus on interpreting stressful situations as a challenge rather than a threat. We call it focusing on empowering interpretations. If you interpret a stressful situation in a way that brings you power, in other words, you have an empowering interpretation, your behavior is more likely to go above the line on the responsibility model. A disempowering interpretation means you interpret or think about a situation in a way that gives your power away and leaves you feeling defeated or fearful that something will go wrong or be taken away from you. The result is your behavior is more likely to go below the line. An important point is that often our fear is unfounded. It comes from things we make up that haven't happened or may never happen. It's false evidence appearing real, or false expectations about reality. You may have heard these expressions before. We are wired for story, and often in the absence of information, we fill in the blanks to fit the story we think is true or that matches our previous experiences. Social workers call these confabulations or lies honestly told. I love the quote by Mark Twain. He says, "I'm an old man now, and I've known a great many problems in my life, most of which never happened. I'm willing to bet that if you begin to pay attention to all the things you worry about and then see if your worst fears come true, just like Mark Twain says, most of them don't happen." It's our false expectations about the reality of what will happen in the future that causes a lot of unnecessary anxiety and distress in our lives. Now, I want to show you how you can change your thinking regarding stressful situation using a simple model called the ABCDE thinking model. And I think this would be awesome to share with your students. This was inspired by the work of psychologist Albert Ellis. This simple model can help you change your disempowering interpretations into empowering interpretations. In turn, you feel better. Your behavior will go above the line on the responsibility model, and your health will improve. In a recent class, a young man helped me demonstrate this process. I asked him to tell the group an activating event in his life, the activating event being A on the thinking model. He told us the activating event was stressful for him. Was an unexpected increase in the work he had to do. Now let's go to B. B stands for belief, what you think. So I asked him to tell us some thoughts about his increased workload. He said, when a coworker retires or takes another job, our organization doesn't replace them. So I start thinking negative. Here we go again. There's so much more work. Every time someone leaves, they do this to me. I bet it's going to be another bad day. Then we move to C, which stands for consequence. So I asked him what the C consequence was when he had those thoughts. He said, well, I feel discouraged, frustrated, and irritable, and it sets the mood for the rest of the day. When I asked him Is your behavior more likely to go above the line or below the line with those negative thoughts? He said, it's going to go below the line. I start blaming the management and shaming myself for not being able to help all the people properly. So now we go to D on the ABCDE thinking model, which stands for dispute. We want to get some evidence to dispute our negative beliefs. Let's work with the two main beliefs this young man was having. The first belief, there's so much more work. The second belief was, it's going to be another bad day. Let's deal with the first belief. I asked him, can you get any evidence to dispute that your workload is going to be high today? He said, well, it's happened many times this year. We've had employees leave, and we always get swamped with their workloads. My response to this was, so there's no evidence to dispute the fact that your workload will become higher. Your workload is high, and you think it's going to get higher, right? He said, yes. If he tries to think positively by saying, the workload is going to be fine today, is the workload actually going to get reduced? Of course not. Importantly, he needs to create empowering thoughts that are based in reality. So I asked him, what thoughts can you tell yourself that would empower you? He said, I can only do one case at a time. No matter how busy or how slow it is, I will manage to overcome the higher workload by doing what I do every day, just knocking out one case at a time. I then asked, do you believe those thoughts? Can you do that? And he said, yes. And of course, he noticed that when he had positive thoughts, he felt a little calmer, a little better, and his behavior was more likely to go above the line. He had more energy as he went through the day. With respect to a second belief that the whole day is going to be bad, the process is the same. He moves to D, dispute, and finds some evidence to dispute his thinking if he can. When I asked him to work through it for us, he said, the truth is the days aren't all bad. I have fun with some of the clients and get satisfaction from those that I do help. I then asked, how do you feel when you focus on those thoughts? What is the C consequence now? He said he felt better about himself and better about doing his job. He also felt more confident about his ability to do his job, and his behavior was more likely to go above the line. When he interpreted the increased workload in an empowering way, he felt better and his behavior was more likely to go above the line. So then if we go to E, which stands for energy, he notices that when he takes responsibility for creating positive interpretations of an event, he has more energy available to do the work. Oftentimes we find ourselves reliving past stressful experiences and worrying that these bad experiences will repeat themselves. When this happens, it is often helpful to say to yourself, this is the old information. These were the circumstances back then. And back then this may have been true, but it's not true today. So today I'll choose a different belief, a belief that helps me feel better about myself. Because when I feel better, I'm more likely to go above the line and take responsibility to create a better outcome for everyone. Also, remember the mindfulness meditation saying that we talked about last time. May I extend the most generous interpretation possible to the words and actions of others. This mindfulness saying will help you stay calm and think clearly about how best to address the situation. The third component of lifting weights to grow our resilience is creating meaningful connections. This means seeking and maintaining relationships that add value to your life. What makes a relationship valuable? Most people tell me, I can relax around the other person and be who I really am. I feel loved and affirmed. We grow together and we have fun. The opposite, social isolation, means not having meaningful connections in our life, not having a strong social support system. It's lacking the ability to give love and receive love. Some of us have a hard time showing others how much we care about them. Others are conditioned to give love, but aren't so good on the receiving end. Scientists are finding that social isolation is an important risk factor for heart disease and other chronic diseases. In fact, cardiologist Dean Ornish states in his book, The Scientific Basis for the Healing Power of Love and Intimacy, quote, I am not aware of any other factor in medicine, not diet, not smoking, not exercise, not stress, not genetics, not drugs, not surgery, that has a greater impact on the quality of our life, incidence of illness, and premature death from all causes than the healing power of love and intimacy. Let me give you an example. Take a look at these two babies, twins born prematurely. The one on the left was dying, and the nurse, against hospital rules, put them in the same incubator. When she put the left arm of the healthy baby across the sick baby's heart rate stabilized and body temperature normalized. That's the power of a meaningful social connection. When we connect to other people, there's a transfer of energy. Strong leaders know this and create meaningful connections with people who provide them with the life energy they need. They also know the importance of connecting with themselves, of tapping into the energy of their inner selves. In fact, in creating meaningful connections, the first person you need to connect with is yourself. The airline industry knows this. That's why they tell us to put the oxygen mask on ourselves first and then our children. Once you have a good connection with yourself, it's much, much easier to connect with others. No person is an island. We can't live alone. We need other people to be happy and successful. Let's do a little activity to learn more about the meaningful connections in your life. Draw a circle and write your name in the middle, and then draw 4 circles around it, like you see on the screen. After you do that, write the names of the people you see on a daily basis within the closest circle to you. The people you see on a weekly basis, put all their names in the next circle. People you see monthly, put their names on the next circle. And people you see infrequently, put their names further and further out. When you finish, go back and put a plus sign beside everybody that feels good in your life, that lights up your life, so to speak, and put a negative or minus sign by people in your life that make the light go out. Think about the ultimate goal of this exercise. It's to have as many people with pluses in the circle next to us as possible. Those people light our life up. If the people in that closest circle don't light us up, we need to work to get the relationship where it's nurturing, or we need to let go of the relationship. And if we have a lot of people in the outer circles with pluses by their names that light our life up, we need to figure out a way to see them more often. The important point is to have frequent, meaningful connections in your life with people that add value. Now that we've discussed the 3 components of lifting weights to grow your resilience, I hope you see how they're connected. If you take responsibility and own your power to choose and create, you'll probably have a positive or empowering thought, and you'll reach out and connect with somebody. On the other hand, if in response to a difficult situation you go below the line on the responsibility model, you'll probably have a negative or disempowering thought and withdraw from the people around you. So with respect to stressful situations in your life, keep asking yourself, how will I take responsibility? How will I create more empowering interpretations about the situation? And how can I use the meaningful connections in my life to help me with this situation? If you commit to this, here's what I promise you will happen. Look at the graph on the left. It shows that things that once bothered you will not bother you as much. You'll notice that your response to an activating or stressful situation that used to push you down to a lower level of functioning, line 1, now after applying these principles will not push you down as much, line 2. In terms of the graph on the right, you may have a few unique stressors that continue to disrupt you as much as they did prior to this webinar. You may even have heard the expression, our core issues or our core issues. However, a core issue that used to take you 6 weeks to get over now might take you 6 days. Or if it used to take you 6 days, now it might take you 6 hours. Or what used to take you 6 hours now might take you 6 minutes. In other words, line 1 shifts up to line 2. Trust me on that. I promise you it will happen. If you consistently practice taking responsibility, thinking in empowering ways, and connecting with other people, you will create a stronger and stronger foundation of resilience. Let me give you an example of what I mean by creating a strong foundation of resilience. I remember when our younger daughter wanted to join an elementary basketball league. She couldn't shoot a layup at all. She didn't know which foot to push off of or which hand to go up with the ball to shoot. When you learn any new skill, excuse me, it's when you learn any new skill, it's difficult in the beginning, and our younger daughter was struggling. Yet she was committed to success, so she practiced. The result, she learned to love basketball and shoot a layup without even thinking. It became automatic for her, a part of who she was. Likewise, as you continue to practice the three components of using stress to grow, over time, taking responsibility will become automatic. You might think for a minute, oh, I'm blaming someone else or I'm shaming myself, but you'll be able to let it go a lot faster and take responsibility. It's like when you say to yourself, these kids are driving me crazy. And then you remember, oh, I'm allowing these kids to drive me crazy. What can I do besides go crazy? You'll find yourself owning your power to choose and create a lot quicker. The next practice is one of my favorites. Years back, I met a psychologist, Richard Schwartz, and read his book, Internal Family Systems Therapy. The core component of his therapy is the self. After studying with Dr. Schwartz for several years, I came to believe that to really grow our resilience, you must have yourself present. Our self is our inner leader. It's similar to what others have called mindfulness, being in the flow, following your bliss, or having a secure sense of self. However, it's different from those descriptions, and that the self is an active, compassionate leader rather than a non-assertive, non-judgmental observer or witness. Much like the conductor of an orchestra, or like the best parent, the best teacher, the best coach you ever had. It is this active leading by the self that enables each of us to transform stressful situations into opportunities for growth. I'm going to describe 9 characteristics of self-leadership. They all start with C, so they'll be easy for you to remember. The first and most important characteristic is calm. When you're leading with yourself, you aren't overcome by the fight or flight response. You're in self-energy. You're the eye of the storm. You're calm. When you're calm, it's easier to have a sense of clarity. The second characteristic. Clarity means you see the reality of the situation. You see what's really true. The experience of clarity reflects what the Buddhists call a beginner's mind, a view in which there are many possibilities. The absence of clarity is characterized by limited perception or the experience of extreme beliefs and emotions. When you're in self-energy, you're also curious. Curiosity, the third characteristic, means you wonder about situations rather than judge them. For example, I'd be curious about your anger or curious about my own anger. I might even say to myself, isn't that interesting? The intent is to understand rather than judge. Curiosity results in conversations that are enlightening as well as growth producing. The fourth characteristic of self-leadership is compassion. You notice you're living open-handed, open-hearted. You have compassion for another person. You can be with the other person's feelings and thoughts without having the urge to rescue them or distance from them. The fifth characteristic is confidence. Confidence has to do with being in the present moment. You're confident you can handle the present moment. You're not worried about the future. You're not worrying over the past. You've probably heard the expression, it's not the snake that bites you, it's chasing that sucker that drives the poison to the heart, which simply means it's not what happens to us initially that hurts us so much. It's reliving it over and over and over again. So when we're calm, we're in the present moment and we have confidence that we can handle the current situation. The sixth characteristic is courage. When we're in the present moment, you see the reality of the situation, and this gives you the courage to act, the courage to do what needs to be done. When you have courage, creativity emerges, the seventh characteristic. Possibility begins to show up as a way of life. You experience your innate wisdom in truth. The eighth characteristic is connectedness. Connectedness is defined as experiencing more and more self-energy. Myself is no different from yourself. To use an ocean as a metaphor, it's like each of us is an individual wave in the ocean, and we're the ocean. Both are true. It's the expression, not two, not one. We're separate, and yet we're totally connected. The final characteristic is contentment. Contentment means that we're at peace. We trust the process of life. It doesn't mean that we're complacent about life. We still work to achieve our dreams, but we are content with where we are in this moment. Those are the 9 characteristics of self-leadership. That's who you really are. That's who we all are. I know you've had moments in your life where you're in touch with your self-energy. And when you're in that energy, it's much easier to take responsibility, to focus on empowering thoughts, and to connect with others. Now let me ask you, when you're not in this energy, when calm and clarity are not leading, when confident and creative energy are not leading, what energy is leading? Negative energy is leading, correct? If you're not calm, how are you feeling? Think about that for a minute. Most of us give one of two answers. We either say we're anxious or we're angry. It's the same for me too. And here's how you can help yourself. It's one of the most profound things I've ever learned. If a young child came into where you are right now, and you could tell this child was anxious, scared, what would you do for this child? You'd want to comfort the child, right? You try to figure out what has this child so upset and anxious so that you can address it and calm the child down, correct? Get the child back to self-leadership. Suppose you've got another child who's very angry. You can't find the child's mother. What would you do? Again, you're going to try and figure out what has this child so angry? What's this child angry about? How can you calm the child down? Try and get the child back to self-leadership. Now think about it. What do you do with yourself when you're upset? Do you reach out and try to calm yourself down when you're anxious or mad, or do you just wish it would go away? You probably just wish it would go away, right? In the past, you may have tried to get rid of it or suppress it. Maybe you tried not to think about it, but did it work? No, it usually festers and many times grows bigger. So what I'm suggesting you do is bring the same self-energy to the part of you that's feeling anxious or mad or whatever you're feeling that you would bring to a child who is angry or upset. And you have an above the line discussion with the part of you that is anxious or the part of you that's angry. You bring your calm, loving self energy to that part and have a discussion. You help the part of you that is feeling anxious just like you would help a child that's feeling anxious. When you have a lot of self energy present, you'll find yourself taking more responsibility, having more empowering thoughts, and creating more meaningful connections. You'll build a stronger and stronger foundation of resilience. And I promise that your strong foundation of resilience will serve you well. When the storms of life push you off track, you'll find yourself bouncing right back. As you experience more and more self-energy, you'll become a more resilient individual and create more and more moments of thriving in your life. You'll have more confidence, more skills, and a greater social support network. So thanks so much for taking the time out of your busy day to listen. And until next time, I hope you make it a habit to practice using stressful situation as an opportunity to grow and to practice living from a place of self-leadership. Next time, we'll talk about the practice of positivity and the practice of renewal. Until then, may you be filled with loving kindness. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you notice the brave and the brokenhearted. After all, as Rumi says, we're all just walking each other home. Thank you.
Wow, I don't know how to follow up on that. That was amazing. I have to. Now's the time for us to take questions, and so if you've got questions, go ahead and type them in on the GoToWebinar control panel. We anticipate that there will be a lot of questions, and we can obviously answer those later. But I've got a question here, and it's a pretty hard question. Somebody wanted to know, can you run through the ABCDE model again using maybe a high school student, a problem typically associated with a high school student, so we can actually go back to that. You can go back to that slide, go up.
And I'll go back to it.
There it is. Yeah, there it is, right there. So
sure.
I'll quit talking. So
yeah. So with freshmen, I see this a lot. So the adversity is they do poorly on their first exam when they're used to making all A's. And so now they've made a C. And it activates them. They're very upset. And their belief is, most common belief we hear is, I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I shouldn't be here. Sometimes we hear this professor, this is a sorry professor or what have you, but let's focus on I'm not smart enough or I'm not good enough. So the consequence, so we help the students see the consequence of, well, first of all, in response to any activating event, anytime we have a negative belief, we always feel bad and our behavior goes below the line. So the student who says, I'm not smart enough is going to feel bad. And often their behavior will go below the line. They'll shame themselves or make excuses for their grade or blame the teacher or just be in denial. So we got to go to D and get some evidence to dispute their thinking. So we we tell students, hey, if you weren't smart enough, we wouldn't have accepted you to the University of Texas. So obviously you're smart enough. So we try to help them see that that's not true, that they are smart enough. And then we go back and try to have them say some empowering interpretations, like what belief might be, acknowledging the reality. Well, this isn't high school. This is the University of Texas. And so it's harder here. There are many of resources it can go to. I can go to my TA. I can go to the professor's office hours. I'm going to have to study harder. We try to get them thinking thoughts that are realistic but empowering, and then have them notice that they're feeling a little better and their behavior now is more likely to take responsibility and they have more energy. And if in response to the activating event they have a negative belief, see consequence, they feel bad, their behavior's above the line, they feel drained, their energy's drained. We also do a lot of the reverse with students where we have them notice activating events, adversity, where they had positive beliefs, they had empowering beliefs, and they feel to see consequences that they feel good and they took responsibility and they have more energy. So I try to spend a lot of time just showing them how, yes, they're having empowering interpretations in response to adversity, and their consequence is good. They're feeling better and their behavior's above the line and they've got more energy. So I try to hammer that in. But then with the negative beliefs, we work with dispute, and just if they can't get anything, we have them take 10, distract. That's what the distract and distance is for.
Well, and these would be great tools to use as a parent too, if you could master these or practice these skills as a parent.
Absolutely.
I have a kind of a technical question about you mentioned Dean Ornish. I can't remember the name of the book that you mentioned. Can you repeat the name of the book that he wrote?
Yeah, he wrote a book called The Scientific Basis for the Healing Power of Love and Intimacy.
Can you say that one more time?
The Scientific Basis for the Healing Power of Love and Intimacy. Awesome. He graduated from UT a long time ago.
A long time ago.
How about that?
All good things come out of Austin, Texas, they say.
What starts here changes the world.
That's right.
Just like you, Dr. Adams.
I think that is about all the time we have right now, and we meet again in 2 weeks, and for the third and final session of Building a Better You. So thank you, everybody, and we wish you well, and we'll talk to you again in 2 weeks. Thanks.
Thank you.